Let's go ahead and get started. And let's jump right into the content. So this is what we're talking about today, just so everybody knows and we're all on the same page. Obviously, we're going over quite a bit. And actually, there's a couple of changes in the law I just want to go over and make sure everyone's comfortable with, because we do have filing season coming up. And so a couple of things. There's been some immense changes in the 1099, 1042S world in particular. And so I know it's not a topic that's part of today's content, but please remember that every single Form W-8 was updated and revamped this summer. The IRS did that. And so that means new compliance requirements, new filing requirements. And so if you are filing Forms 1042, 1042S next year, please make sure you're updated on those. Also know that by next month, you should be using those brand new W-8s. So keep that in mind as well. Be careful as well. Early this year, the IRS announced they're making enforcement 50% of their budget. So that's way up. The portion of their budget in turn that's devoted to helping answer your tax issues is way down. It's only 6% now. So as enforcement climbs, they're cutting back in other programs. Call times are way up in terms of the wait times to get through. Only around a third of the people who do call get through on any given basis. And of course, the answers range all over the map depending upon what customer service rep answers the phone. None of those answers are given in writing. So you want to be really careful there. Audits are up as well. If you're a large organization, which the IRS defines as having at least $20 million in total assets, you had an 80% chance of being audited last year, which is insane. If you're a small organization, your odds are a third, basically, a 33% chance. So be careful. Watch out for your filing early in January. This is something a lot of people are forgetting. But early this year, the IRS made it more likely you'll be penalized next year for minor 1099 errors. And what they did was, a couple of years ago, they had passed a law that said if you make a mistake, an error in filing, and it relates to an incorrect dollar amount, and the error differs from the correct amount by no more than $100, you're okay. They'll call it a de minimis error, and you won't face a proposed penalty for that. Then they turned around, though, earlier this year and walked that back a bit. And what they said was, if the payee comes back to you and requests that your filing be accurate down to the penny, you got to do that. Okay. Now, there's a couple of things that go along with that that you need to know. So, for example, you can prescribe the manner for which the payee elects to tell you they're requiring you to be accurate in your filing, and you're not going to get that de minimis safe harbor. And you want to make sure you do that because otherwise, someone on your team can get a call or an email, or even, if they, for some reason, use snail mail to send you a notice. And that might get lost in the shuffle of filing season. And so you got to be real careful, because if they make that election, you got to meet that. And you also have validation steps you got to take to make sure they make the election properly. That's part of your due diligence requirements. So it's another layer of due diligence compliance requirements, but it relates to filing season. So you got to be really careful. And obviously that's not the topic of today's webinar. In other webinars I go into more detail on that. I'm just letting everyone know so we can get into the good stuff here on the fringe benefits and whatnot. Something else I want to remind you about, watch out for your extensions. Used to be automatic, now not so much, okay? Started with the W-2s last January. The IRS is rolling back the automatic 30-day extensions of time to file they used to grant. They're replacing it with a non-automatic 30-day extension, and they only are granting that in very limited cases where your explanation demonstrates it's needed as a result of some sort of extraordinary circumstance or catastrophe. Now, unfortunately, we've had a lot of catastrophes like the recent hurricanes in Texas and Florida, the wildfires in California, and so on. So there is that out there. If you've been impacted by those things, your business operations, you definitely want to include that in your request for an extension. Something else you really need to know about. Obviously, I hope everyone knows that if you're filing a Box 7 1099 miscellaneous payment, you're reporting that. early next year, that it's got to be done by January 31st. Earlier this year was the first time we had to do that, all right? So, and then of course, if it's a non-Box 7 payment and you're filing it on paper, you have until the end of February. If you're doing it electronically, you have until the end of March.